Hello and welcome everyone to the Participating Democracy Voter Education and Engagement Workshop Series. My name is Ellen Knutson and I'm the Program Manager for Practicing Democracy. I'm joined today by Kathy Copeland, the Director of the American Democracy Project. Happy to have you with us, Kathy. But as we're getting started, if everyone could give us a small introduction in chat, just let us know where you're zooming in from, who you are. I'm zooming in from Portland, Oregon. So it's a little bit of an overcast spring day out here, but still nice. Today we're having our Developing Engaged Students workshop. And I'm very thrilled that Amanda Miller from the U.S. Department of Education, Kara Ong Whaley from Issue 1, Mary Curran Percival and Heather Cabral from San Jose State are all here with us. But before I turn things over to them, I do want to say a few words about the series. We're now sort of in the middle. Oh yeah, happy tax day, April 15th. In the middle of our third month of this series, we're continuing to bring in speakers and projects that we're hoping are stimulating good conversation and demonstrating best practices that are going to give our campuses the resources they need to develop capacity and really build a strong commitment to a healthy democracy on campus. At the end of today's session, I'm going to highlight a few more of the upcoming sessions, but I did want to also let you know that if you've missed any of the workshops in February or March or earlier this month, they are all recorded and up and available to you on our website. I'm going to pop that into chat here. So the first one is the April sessions, so you can register, see the recordings, and then the recordings for February and March. And now I'm going to ask Kathy to say a few words about the upcoming Civic Learning and Democratic Engagement meeting in Detroit.
Yes.
Kathy.
Happy to do so. And again, I'm Kathy Copeland. I'm the director of the American Democracy Project at AASCU. I'm actually zooming in here from Harrisonburg, Virginia, where it feels like summer outside. So that's a positive. I'll say, as Ellen mentioned, we have a Civic Learning and Democratic Engagement Conference. It is an annual conference that AASCU co-runs with NASPA every year. This year it is in Detroit, Michigan, and it will be June 5th through 7th. So this is really a key place for people to come, for students, faculty, staff, and administrators to gather, to collaborate on what sorts of civic learning can be done on campuses. It encompasses voter education and engagement and also goes broader than that and really talks about how students can be active and engaged global citizens. So we'd love to have you join us for that. And the great city of Detroit is absolutely beautiful in June. So hope that you can come over there and you can look at Canada across the way if you need to have a second country in the way. I will hand it back to Ellen and excited and thankful to all of our presenters for sharing their information with us today.
Great, thanks, Kathy. So I'm very pleased to do a very quick introduction of today's presenters because I know you're here to hear them and not me. Amanda Miller serves as the Deputy Assistant Secretary for Higher Education Programs in the Office of Post-Secondary Education at the U.S. Department of Education. Previously, she's worked in the U.S. Senate, holding several senior roles throughout her career. But she also serves as an adjunct professor at American University, teaching advocacy and education policy courses. Kara Ong Whaley is Director of Education Protection at Issue 1. Previously, though, she worked at the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. And she also serves as the co-chair of the American Political Science Association for Civic Engagement, or the Civic Engagement section. And has authored or edited several books, and I understand that 2 are coming out in the next several months. So looking forward to those. Oh, don't mean to be moving those slides. I meant to be moving my scripts down and not the slides. Okay. Mary Curran Percival is Associate Professor of Political Science at San Jose State University in California. She also serves as the director of the Institute for Public Affairs and Civic Engagement, where she is the founding director of SJSU Votes, a nonpartisan campus voter registration, mobilization, education, and civic engagement initiative, of which we will be hearing more about shortly, together with Heather Cabral, who is a fourth-year political science major at San Jose State. Graduated in May, so yay, Heather, it's exciting times. Currently, she's a visiting student at Sacramento State, participating in the California State University Sacramento semester program, which provides the students opportunities to intern for the California State Legislature or other agencies and organizations. So without further ado, I'm going to stop my screen share and turn things over to Amanda. Amanda, thanks so much.
Sure. And thank you for inviting me and for having me talk to this group. We are trying to get the word out about some of the things we've been doing at the department, so appreciate the opportunity. So I just wanted to give a brief overview of 2 different things that we released in February, and then happy to take any questions at that point. But we, following the president's executive order in 2021 and the fact sheet that he directed agencies of things to do to implement that executive order on voting in 2022, we issued we had committed to doing a voter toolkit for college campuses and K-12 schools. And we released that this past February. Or sorry, was it February? Now I don't remember, but this past couple months ago, I think it was the end of February. Could have been March. And we released our toolkit, and the toolkit is designed really targeting institutional leadership. So it's, I think, helpful to students as we've been sharing it with student groups as well, but really it's really targeted towards both K-12 state superintendents and then at the college level institution and college leaders. And it does a couple of things. It is each section, there's 3 different sections. There's a section on voter registration, a section on our federal work study funds, and then a section on facilitating voting more generally. And each section, what we try to do is provide a summary of the law so that schools are familiar with their obligations in this area, but then really go beyond that. And the next section for each of those talks about recommendations and things schools can do either to make sure they're meeting those obligations or to go beyond, but still within the confines of what they are able to do with nonpartisan voter engagement. The 3rd section in each of those has federal resources. And then the 4th section is examples or case studies from schools. I think what we learned was when we're hearing from schools about what would be the most helpful is schools sometimes are nervous about what they can or can't do. And both knowing what they can do is helpful, but also seeing how and what other schools are doing makes them feel like that they're in good company and they're not going to get in trouble, but also can get some really creative ideas because so many schools are doing great things in this area already. I don't know if you guys have a copy of the toolkit. I could put it in the chat as soon as I'm done if you don't, but it's linked on Ed's website. And so we really want to figure out the best way to get this out and sort of relying on all of you to help us do that. But I think in addition to the requirements that are in HEA around what schools have to do for voter registration, there's so much more they can do with their federal work study funds, and also just making sure that their campuses are easily accessible and their students know everything from where to register and how to register and then where to go on election day. The other thing that we issued at the same time was some new guidance around our federal work study laws. And this is probably mostly applicable to your financial aid officers, but I think if the more campuses are aware, we had gotten a lot of questions about what federal work study funds can be used for. As you know, there's a 7% set aside that needs to be spent on civic engagement activities, and that includes nonpartisan voter registration. We had been asked questions about what 2 different categories. One is what schools can do with if the institution is the employer, And then we've gotten a set of questions about off-campus employment, because HEA sort of makes a distinction between those two in their law, in the statute. We issued in 2022, in April of 2022, we issued a Dear Colleague reminding schools of their obligations around HEA on voter registration, but also asking people to, reminding them that if a student is employed by their institution, they can do voter registration work. And this can be done directly they can have a job just to do that. Or if they're working in the library or they're working in a dorm, they can also do that as part of their work and be paid for by federal work study funds. We then got some more questions about if the employer is not the institution, what kind of jobs can students have using federal work study funds? And we have very old but very prescriptive regulations that we had to work within. But we issued new guidance letting people know that if a student works for a government agency, so a federal, state, local, or tribal public agency, they can do nonpartisan election-related work with their federal and be paid as a federal work study student. And they can do things like be a poll worker, or other voter registration activities that are nonpartisan and we would say even non-political, that are really, in the regular administration of those jobs for a government agency. So we issued that guidance at the same time as the toolkit, and hoping again that schools know about it, that they work with their local election offices and their state election offices to make sure that they can help fill these jobs. It both meets the civic engagement thing, it engages the students more in democracy and teaches them about it. And then it also serves a unique purpose, I think, for the government agencies who are looking for this help. So I'll pause there and answer any questions, but I wanted to just share those two different resources, the Dear Colleague, which is on FSA's website, and the toolkit, which I think is in the chat, which is on our website. And just make sure that you all know it's a resource, and any ideas you have about helping get it out would be great.
Thank you, Amanda. Yeah, if you have questions, please just take yourself off of mute or type into chat. As people are thinking, Amanda, I have a question that I hope
Sure.
doesn't put you too much on the spot, but I was just like, because I didn't prep you for it. But I'd be interested, you mentioned that as part of the toolkit, and, so I know that things are in there, are these examples of what schools have been doing. And I wonder if you have I just thought this is a very cool example.
Yeah, I mean, I think the ones we put in there, I think there's about 20 something schools that we put in examples, and they're all doing great things. I think, they're both, I think, creative ways of making sure that these federal work study funds are being used in these jobs. So some of the examples I mentioned in terms of, if your job is working in the library, you can also give out voter registration forms or tell people. So I think there's that category. I think in the category of just making sure students are registered, thinking about all of the events and the regular opportunities on campus where you can let people know, what they need to do to register. And I think a lot of students register before they get to college. They may not know that they need to register at a new address. So any information that you can share, I think there's not just one, I think it's not just, the requirement from an HEA is you have to send that information 100, I think it's 180 days before, maybe 180 days before the election in your state. But I think doing more and thinking about where are those opportunities to engage students during the year has been, and I think schools are doing really great things in that area.
Great. So Michael asks in chat if there's been any partisan pushback on the toolkit or suggestions on preventing it or reacting
not on
to
the
it.
toolkit. I think someone, Congresswoman Fox, I think it is on her website, we had a letter from some Republican members of Congress on the clarification on our on the Dear Colleague, which we responded to, but not on the toolkit per se.
Great. And I know that your time is short.
Yeah, no, I'm
But,
happy
you
to, thank
know,
you so much. I'm happy to
it's
take
a
any questions. If you get more questions, Ellen, feel free to connect people to me directly or filter them to me and I can get back to people. And again, appreciate anything you guys can do on your campuses and in your states to get this out.
great. Thank you so much, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you.
Join me in giving a virtual round of applause because Amanda has to leave us and can't stay for the rest of the session.
Thanks so much. Good luck.
And we'll move now to Kara.
Thank you so much, Ellen, and it's so great to spend some time with you all. And I will say, so I actually, there's a little bit of nepotism here because I used to work with Kathy at James Madison University. And at that time, I was Associate Director for Civic Engagement. And as part of JMU Civic, we actually employed federal work study students. And so it was actually something that we did there. And students who did the FWS with us actually had the opportunity to do nonpartisan voter education and engagement. And I will say that and those students received awards for doing that work, for taking part of that program, campus-wide Student of the Year awards for employment in student affairs. And I can just say that it's such a great opportunity. Some of the challenges, there are of course some challenges because if they accept that work, there might be a trade-off. And I would just say in terms of best practices, ensuring that you can max out the pay as part of the FWS is really important to do. I'm going to couch some of my comments in terms of having done this work on two campuses, James Madison University and the University of Virginia. I'm only on week 6 at issue 1, but we had sort of a behind the scenes role in helping get this. Issue 1 as an organization had a behind the scenes role in getting this clarification at the federal level. But as I frame these remarks, I'm going to just share a couple of brief slides with you all, if that's okay. Let me get to the slide share view. And to share my screen, sorry. But part of what motivated me in this work is what we are now experiencing on an even greater level, and that is the crisis of confidence in our elections. It was challenging in 2020, and it's gotten even worse since. And I'll show some data points here in just a second in that regards. And we are very much at a crossroads for our country in terms of public confidence in elections. But it is the case that especially Republicans, conservative voters, center-right voters, have less confidence in our election administration processes. But I had noticed this challenge as we were navigating the COVID pandemic year and all the questions that were occurring as different ways for voting were changing as different states and communities navigated the pandemic. And really what came out of that experience was the response at the time to have students participate as election workers themselves, so they could see the process for themselves and so they could learn. It was also the case because of the pandemic, the governor of Virginia put out a call. We ran a little mini campaign at JMU Civic called Call of Duty, really trying to encourage young people to serve as election workers. We recruited 120 JMU students during the 2020 election who actually served and were placed to work in elections. And then we had the opportunity to actually gain feedback from them about their experience. Some of them, actually worked at the polls. Others helped with stuffing absentee ballots and helping in the local registrar's office. And a few things that we learned from that in engaging students' experience was that students, their attitudes changed, especially students who came from a conservative or Republican background. they said that they had greater belief and greater trust in the system. And I co-authored with a student at the time a little mini article about that called "We the People, We the Process: Engaging Young People in Election Administration." And I can drop a link to that in the chat as well. And so we really saw that as students had the opportunity to learn, they had an opportunity to learn about the process, to engage. It actually increased their confidence in the system. So that's where where I'm coming from in this. And a couple of lessons on that was it's really important to as a campus entity, to develop a strong working relationship with the local registrar. And I'm sure those of you on this call already have that. But for us, where we were both in Harrisonburg, now in Charlottesville, Virginia, making sure that we were actually meeting the needs and identifying the challenges that were faced by the local registrars, by the directors of election, by the electoral boards, because there is very much this sense that if you are, and it is completely unfair, but perceptions matter, that if you're working to register and get young people to vote, you must be partisan, right? And so by developing those relationships, by showing up to the electoral board meetings, including with students, by trying to identify the challenges that local registrars face in helping students to vote, we were able to really build an important relationship that was built on trust. But just more broadly, let me share some data. This comes from Gallup, but this shows confidence in the accuracy of elections over time, and this is bipartisanship. So you can see how much there has been a decline in confidence, especially by Republican voters, and it is very much subjected to whose party is in power in the White House. So Democrats tend to have greater confidence when their party is in the White House, and Republicans have more confidence when theirs is. And independents have stayed relatively stable over time. This is the most recent data that we have from national surveys, but let me show you some more recent data. This was fielded at the end of March. So this is relatively new data that we have about Americans' concerns regarding elections and what might influence their views in terms of their confidence in elections. And I just want to point out, there is bipartisan concern about misdis, malinformation, bad information, concern about getting inaccurate information, right? There's clearly some bipartisanship there. Where we tend to see greater divergence is really in the processes. So Republicans are far more likely than Democrats to be concerned that local election offices might count ineligible votes. We are seeing one of the biggest false narratives that we're seeing is the idea that non-citizens can vote. And that's because we're seeing as a strategy the link between emphasis on immigration policy and election security. And that was further evidenced with the press conference last Friday between the Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, and former President Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And so we are seeing, as those things are made salient in the minds of voters by election officials, that is popping up and becoming issues of concern for voters. Conversely, we see that the presence of guns, violence, or intimidation at voting locations are of great concern to folks to folks who identify as Democrats. And we're seeing some states move to ban guns at voting locations because of the increased prospect for political violence this year in election. Another one to point out is biased or inaccurate counting of ballots. Republicans are far more concerned with that. And in the focus groups that we are conducting, in the public opinion surveys we are conducting, in the scraping that we're doing in social media listening, we are finding that this resonates very much so across especially Republican voters. So, we're also seeing simultaneously with that a much more coordinated effort by election denial groups to encourage their members, following, friends, and family to conduct greater scrutiny at polling locations. And I share that because one, it's deeply concerning and challenging, and it's something that we're monitoring, and a number of people are monitoring very closely in different agencies, but also like to be mindful of where we are placing students, and to make sure that we have a menu of options for students to participate, keeping their safety in mind, especially in this election year. So after the 2020 election, and I could go on and on about the threats to elections this year, but that's probably beyond the scope of this call. Coming out of the 2020 election, I did create a learning module on how elections are run that is used both for college, can be used in both a college classroom, but also a K-12 classroom at the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia. We use this for poll worker recruitment day because many high school students can also serve as pages or poll workers. You do not have to be 18 in all localities. So it's also a great way to partner with high school civics teachers, social studies teachers, and to engage students who do not yet have the opportunity to vote in the process. So I'll stop there, and if folks have questions, I'm happy to answer them. I will say that what I have found from my own experience and developing pedagogy and also practicing this in classrooms, in my own classes, as well as at different centers, is that it really does make a meaningful difference as long as we are not burdening our local directors of elections, not burdening our local registrars who are already stretched beyond capacity, who are subject to incredible public scrutiny in this moment, who are experiencing a crazy amount of threats, violence, and abuse. And because the majority of them are women, it's gendered. And so women are bearing the brunt of this, and especially women of color are bearing the brunt of those threats, harassment, and abuse.
Thank you, Kara. If anyone has a burning question, please go ahead and then put it into chat, but I'm gonna, and we'll come back to it, but I'm gonna ask Mary and Heather to tell us about the work that they're doing at San Jose State, and then at the end we can have a full discussion from what we've heard from everyone.
That
Mary
sounds
and
great.
Heather.
Thank you so much. We do actually have a slideshow. I'm going to ask Heather to go ahead and get us started.
Yeah, you're going to share the slide.
I am.
Okay. So thanks everyone for coming to listen to us talk to you today. So we are representing San Jose State University. So we work on a project called SJSU Votes. So this is a nonpartisan voter registration, mobilization, education, and civic engagement initiative at SJSU. So this project is housed under the Institute of Public Affairs and Civic Engagement, which is otherwise known as IPACE. And this is under the Department of Political Science. So we work both on campus and in the San Jose community, in like historically underrepresented communities around campus. We also are responsible for doing both in-person and virtual events for our campus. And then the next slide. So as far as students, SJSU Votes began as a class project in Mary Curran Percival's Political Science 108 political participation class in the fall of 2018, and it was an active learning project. She had the GOTV class projects in previous courses, Polls 108 and Polls 15 classes, but SJSU Votes is the most extensive project and has become more than a class project since fall 2018. So students also work on this project through means of internships, and some even enrolling in the department political science internship class, which is what I was a part of. I worked as a paid intern and then also took the political science internship class, so I was able to gain credits at the same time. And then between fall 2018 and spring 2024, over 200 students have enrolled in courses working on this project. Additionally, hundreds of student volunteers worked with SJSU Votes or with co-sponsors. And then other students have worked with SJSU Votes as paid interns and also not enrolled as not enrolled in the internship course, sorry. And then we're also responsible for many different events, as I said before. So some of these include registration events and workshops. So these are just some of the flyers that we've made showing like advertising our events. So one of these was boba and ballots. We had another registration deadline event. SJSU Votes Festival for National Voter Registration Day, registration workshops on campus for housing and athletics. And during the pandemic, we conducted voter mini workshops. And so we did those over 70 different Zoom classes. So these are some of the education events. So we've done, these are all nonpartisan education events. And so we've conducted ballot measure forums, and the one you see on the right is our Congress to Campus flyer that we did. So SJSU is a co-sponsor for Congress to Campus. And so in fall of 2023, me and Dr. Kern Percival moderated this event. And so this was a virtual event, but actually next week we're having a 3-day in-person event for Congress to Campus. Will be at San Jose State. So we're looking forward to that. And then we also have Santa Clara County Registrar of Voter talks for the SJSU community, our Registrar of Voters, and candidate debates like the mayoral debate in 2022. And then we also are responsible for mobilization events. So some of these events include Right to Vote. As you can see on the left hand, this is our flyer for that. And this was an event co-sponsored with the Department of English and Comparative Languages. We also are responsible for tabling near the on-campus vote center and canvassing on campus and in these neighborhoods that we talked about near our near San Jose State. So this is just some of the events that we do. We're responsible for a lot of these celebrating civic engagement on campus. And I'll pass it off to Dr. Kern Percival.
Thanks so much, Heather. So as you can see, we do a lot of events. We've done, tons of events since 2018. And we wanted to talk a little bit about what works, what makes our project pretty successful. And we focused on these major components: organization, partnerships, celebrating our team members' skills, using shared resources and other organizations. A lot of these organizations have been mentioned already today. And advocacy and communication. We're giving you the quick version of this. There's so much more that kind of goes into what makes us work, although we do consider ourselves always a work in progress. This is the quick version of our organization. We are, Heather will tell you, a hyper-organized project. This is a screenshot from one semester's team drive. We use Google Team Drives extensively because we have so many projects all of the time. We keep separate files for each one of, separate folders for each one of the projects. All of the students that are enrolled in a class that are using SJSU Votes as an active learning project, they'll be invited to this Google Team Drive, and students will either volunteer for or be assigned to a project based on their listed skills or their listed interests. They'll be assigned to a particular folder because they're assigned to the project. And they'll work on the project through this folder. And then in each of these folders, of course, we have folders for particular events or for programs or for the flyers. And it's a great way of keeping the project super organized. And then during the pandemic, this was really, really vital because we couldn't meet in person. And so it really helps us keep the project timely, keep us really, really organized. The partnerships, this is one of the most important parts of SJSU Votes, is we can't do anything alone. We do rely very much on our partnerships. We learn a great deal from our partners. We are big believers in sharing resources, sharing knowledge, sharing gifts. And so the SJSU Votes Festival, celebrating National Voter Registration Day, this last September 2023, is our most successful SJSU Votes Festival ever. We had 24 on-campus and community partners work with us for this festival, and you can see all of their logos. We love to celebrate our partners when we do events. You can see from the SJSU Votes website, which is just sjsuvotes.org. We love to celebrate our partners when we do our events. I really want to give a shout out to the woman in the middle with the VOTA fan. That's Natalie Goolsby. She's the election specialist outreach coordinator at the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters. The Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters has been a longtime partner of SJSU Votes, but especially Natalie. So she has shared all sorts of resources, not just physical resources from the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters, but just her vast knowledge of voter registration, just her work in the field, but her knowledge of nonpartisan voter registration. And so we really value these partnerships. And so I mentioned these nonpartisan folks that we work with, folks from the League of Women Voters to the cultural organizations on campus and off campus, groups like Akbayan, Asian Law Alliance, Undocu Spartan Resource Center. The work that we do at SJSU Votes, we don't just focus on voting, we focus on all sorts of civic engagement. And then we also work with elected leaders in the community, like the mayor's office, and elected leaders like county supervisors, like city council members, like our state senator, Dave Cortese. And so a lot of these folks came out to join us at this SJSU Votes Festival, and they shared resources, not just information about voting, but also internship opportunities, other ways to volunteer, other ways to get involved in the community. And so here's a picture of before, when we first got started, the SJSU Votes Festival. This year, we were able to pay for all of our partners to actually, we were able to pay for the umbrellas and the tables and set the whole thing up, and also with some assistance from the College of Social Sciences. And so every year now, when we do the SJSU Votes Festival, we're going to provide all of the resources at the festival for our partners, because we find it's a much more organized festival, but also we're able to have a more uniform appearance, and the festival is a lot smoother. This Spartan Daily article was a wonderful celebration of our festival, but also really celebrated the community spirit of the festival and our partnership. The other thing I wanted to mention was celebrating our team members' skills. Most of the time SJSU Votes runs, it's through an active learning project with our students. And we really love to celebrate our students' skills. And many times our students join us, they are not political science majors. They join us through an intro political science class, Political Science 15. They may have some interest in politics, but they may not have a vast background in politics or political science. And so they come to us with all sorts of other skills that we celebrate. So I'll do something called a skills inventory. It's something that a former colleague of mine, Amy Strage, who used to run our Center for Faculty Development, she encouraged me to use this, where we learn about our students' skills in addition to political science. So stuff like language skills, artistic skills, design skills, whether they have a flexible schedule, or are they really great organizers, and what kind of, Google Calendar skills do they have, for instance, social media skills, and how can we incorporate that into our project? And here are some of the examples. Heather talked about our boba and ballots voter registration deadline event. Our students organized this amazing flyer. Graphic design students made that outstanding flyer, something way more awesome than I would have made. This great art in the middle. One of my students who's an artist currently in our intro political science class, American government class, designed this. They drew a Bigfoot, and I said, hey, can you do Bigfoot in front of the student union and put the SJSU Votes logo on it, and let's put this on a button? And they totally did. And we had this made into a button and started giving it out at some of our tabling events. And then in the bottom, you see this great poster that one of my students in an intro class painted for us. And we used this poster for a long time. Another great example of this is our incredibly diverse university. We have excellent language skills. So a lot of our students speak languages in addition to English. And when we go out into the community and do door-to-door canvassing, mobilization, it's fantastic that we're able to provide information in languages in addition to English. And so you can see our original flyer encouraging people to vote in the presidential primary. This time when we did our canvassing in the neighborhood, we were also able to provide this flyer in Spanish, Vietnamese, and Tagalog. And students in my intro class were able to do this translation for me. So I was able to have this flyer in 4 languages. And then I also really want to give a shout out to all of the shared resources that we use. And so organizations like Students Learn, Students Vote, Ask Every Student, all of these other outstanding organizations provide resources to SJSU Votes. So this is from an Ask Every Student training series. I first learned about this actually at the Civic Learning and Democratic Engagement Conference. They provided this pledge card, and they said, feel free to manipulate it in such a way that it works for your organization. And so we did. We changed a couple of the questions, and we added our logo and our QR code. And this is something we routinely use at our tabling events, and we collect information, ask students to opt in to, so we'll remind them to vote. And if they don't want to opt in, they can just fill this out as a reminder to pledge to vote. And then another great resource that we use at our SJSU Votes Festival, we were inspired by the Center for Community Learning and Leadership at SJSU. They do a community connections fair, and they do a passport. So as students go to the different booths, they can get their passport stamped. So we modeled our SJSU Votes Festival guide after that CCLL passport. So as students visited the different booths, they don't have to register to vote to get this stamped. They just have to interact with the different partners. And if they interacted with the partners, they would get a stamp, and we provided each of the partners with stamps. And so they would get their passport or their festival guide stamped, and they could earn SJSU Votes t-shirts or SJSU Votes pens or all sorts of prizes. And then the last thing we wanted to share is we've really been focusing a lot on advocating for the project and really communicating all of the good work that our project does for the university, all of the fantastic work that our students do. And I know that our university has really been acknowledging this. And we've really been advocating to make sure that SJSU Votes is noticed for the great mobilization and registration work that it does. And so here's an example of some communication that came out recently from the university. I was assisting the university with notifying the campus of voter registration dates, of election dates, election information. And I asked, when this email comes out, could we make sure that the SJSU Votes logo ends up on it and SJSU Votes events are publicized? And they were very wonderful in making sure that that happened. And then in 2020, we earned a spot on the SJSU elections page on the SJSU website. And so now when students look for election resources, first, it's fantastic that the university has a space on the website with election information, but also it's outstanding that we have a spot on that page. SJSU Votes has a spot on that page. And then I just wanted to thank the university president, Cynthia Teniente Matson, for acknowledging all of our hard work on her Instagram more recently. And then Heather, I'm going to leave that with you.
Thank you. So yeah, we just wanted to give a quick shout out for some of the inspiration, influences, and these are just some of the groups that we've worked with, used shared resources from. These are definitely not all of them. Obviously, we've had a lot of different partners, but some of these are the American Democracy Project, Civic Learning Democratic Engagement Meeting, Students Learn, Students Vote, Ask Every Student, All In Campus Democracy Challenge, California League of Women Voters, California Students Vote Project, Civic Holidays, SJSU Center for Community Learning and Leadership, and then as well the Santa Clara County Registrar of Voters Outreach Coordinator. So yeah, it takes a village to help us run what we do at San Jose State for SJSU Votes. We're happy to answer any questions you guys might have. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Mary and Heather. There's a couple of questions that came through on chat while you were speaking. So first, how do you work with the legislative district candidates and campaigns to get students the information about the candidates?
So I'm happy to take this one. As far as information about the candidates, so a lot of times candidates will come to us and ask, can we come to classrooms? So they'll come to me. I'm also the internship coordinator. They'll ask, can we come to classes? And I typically don't allow candidates to come to classes only because then we would have to open it up to all classes. So typically what we'll do is we'll allow them to come to meetings. If they want to come to Pi Sigma Alpha, I'm also the Honor Society advisor. If they want to come to meetings and give presentations, they're more than welcome to come to meetings and give presentations. We have links to all of the elected leaders' websites. So if on the SJSU Votes website, so if people want to contact their elected leaders, but candidates themselves, SJSU Votes doesn't provide links to that because we're nonpartisan. If we provided links, we'd have to provide links to everyone. We don't do a voter guide right now. We've considered doing something like that, providing information. Right now, it's a monumental task. I look to folks like Elizabeth Benyon for advice on how to do that well. And right now, because we don't have the capacity to do it, we haven't been able to do it. But we do provide resources like Vote 411, which is a League of Women Voters resource, which is a really great guide. But we have had events on campus where we've invited multiple candidates running for an office and provided that resource for them to speak to all candidates. Oh, I'm sorry, to all students.
Great, thanks. And similar question or question from the same person was about types of swag.
Yeah. Sorry, I was trying to respond to that like while I seen it at the end of our presentation, so I only typed a little bit of my response. But we kind of follow the same thing of trying to be mindful that things aren't just gonna get thrown away, like Kara was saying. But yeah, we have a lot of pens that have our logo. We have a lot of things that are also like we were talking about those buttons that we offer. Like trying to find ways to incorporate like student works into what we're giving away. So a lot of the stickers that we have, like we give away a lot of just like there's like the voting stickers, There were a couple of those, I'm not sure if all of them, but we have different stacks that were made by our students on campus. And then we also give away, like at our festival, when they would fill out those little passport festival guides for interacting with all of our booths. Then once they get all of those stamps, they can come and we have SJSU t-shirts and then like drawstring bags. We use like little hand sanitizers. Usually I have one like around, but just like a little hand sanitizer that has our logo on it. And those are definitely were very good. There we go. For definitely during the pandemic and stuff like that. I think we used to have masks maybe. And so just stuff like that that students are actually going to use is definitely more helpful than just giving them like something that's just going to get thrown away. So I think that was a good point to add, that you don't want to use something that's going to end up in a landfill, definitely.
And the Register of Voters has some pretty outstanding swag that is like pocket constitutions and first aid kits, some really great, and then stickers, really outstanding stickers that our students really enjoy. So Natalie Goolsby, the woman that I gave the shout out to, she's really fantastic at giving us swag that our students really like, that isn't just, you know, garbage.
The stickers are usually the first thing to go. We run out of those very
Yeah, we run out of those really quickly.
Any other questions or comments for Kara, Mary, or Heather? I think it's all very exciting work. I will just give a shout out to an earlier, I was trying to look it up and then I couldn't in very quick succession. But we actually had Elizabeth Binion in one of these earlier workshops talking about how she put together voter guides. So if for anyone who is on this call is interested in that, you know, that recording is on our website. And I am dropping into the chat here a link to a workshop evaluation for today's workshop if folks want to click on it to have it open and to answer it when we're completely finished. But I do still want to have space if there are other questions or comments.
Let me pose a question to the group if I can. I'd love to hear how campuses are thinking about how they're going to deal with misinformation, disinformation, malinformation, false narratives, especially on social media this year, and how they're dealing with generative AI.
Just some small questions.
Is anyone working contingencies into their voter plans on that this year?
I'm from WSU Vancouver, and to be honest, we're just working on a more solid outreach. Our campus is a commuter campus, and so it's only been the last 2 years that us as student government has been more active with our campus. And this year, our director of legislative affairs, our internal director of legislative affairs has worked with me in the community to connect with the legislative districts. And also just really trying to get the League of Women Voters to work with us to, you know, get out kind of that nonpartisan information. But as far as like our ADP group, I'm not sure what's going on with that club. It's now a club. So I'm not really sure what's going on with that. I haven't gotten information about that yet. But yeah, I think we're working on a new foundation. So unfortunately, it's the wrong year for prep work. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at.
Thanks, Jessica. Michael, do you want to say a few words about the link you dropped into chat?
Sure. I work for the Minnesota Secretary of State's office in voter outreach, and I deal with and try to support colleges and universities in Minnesota, along with help them to comply with some of the requirements that were put in last year. And if you haven't seen the changes to Minnesota election law in 2023, you might be interested in taking a look. They include such things as appointing a campus vote coordinator, having a website with student-directed information that's maintained, a number of things. But one of the pages that we established on our website deals with misinformation and disinformation, which you can see if you head there. So there are three headings. Fact and fiction is that first one, and then transparency and public access is the second. So as a resource, we make sure that college campuses have that as at least the opportunity to link to it if they don't want to develop their own page or section of their web page on student voting and engagement that deals with AI and disinformation.
That's a fantastic resource. Thank you.
Thank you. We're at the very last minute of our hour. I always feel like these hours go by very fast. I'm gonna share my screen quickly just to have up the next 3 workshops that we're doing in this series. Friday on our AI and the election. So if that's of interest, I hope you come back in a few days. Next week, Monday, we'll talk through ways that we can strengthen campus community voting initiatives. So really a good continuation of today's conversation. And then next Friday, in ways that we can incorporate voter issues into the classroom. And now we're at the top of the hour, so I hope that you can join me in thanking Kara and Mary and Heather for your time and your information. It's all been great. And thanks to everyone for joining us here today. Hope to see you in future workshops and really wish you a lovely week.
Thank you.